Hello and welcome to Forbidden Science, the secret of our past, the promise of our future. My name is Gregg Braden. I am co-hosting this all-new course with my colleague, my dear friend, Nassim Haramein. And we are here today in his laboratory to share with you just a little bit about what this course is and why we've come together. Nassim, would you like to say hello to our audience right now?
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you.
It is an honor. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you the secret we just discovered. This is our 30-year anniversary of when we first met.
Exactly, 91.
As friends, 1991. And you know, the first thing when people began hearing that this course is coming together, they asked the question, why Gregg and Nassim? How do you two know one another? Do you know one another? So we have a secret history we want to share with you a little bit, and it will lead into why we do the work we do, why we put this course together. I was living in the high desert of northern New Mexico, just outside of Taos, New Mexico, 1991. I had a phone call from Nassim, and he made the journey to meet me at a cafe. It was called the Bent Street Cafe. That's still there.
I was coming all the way from Canada, Whistler, Canada, to meet you.
And I had just come back from Egypt and had some of the first photographic images of what we now call the flower of life.
Correct. And as well, you had done some research on crop circles and all kinds of things that I was unaware of. Yeah. And you really launched me into looking deeper into those things.
Oh, well, we're still working together. So
yes.
The flower of life, I think most of you know, is the mysterious geometric pattern. It was found originally in the Osirian in Abydos, Egypt, about 90 miles outside Luxor on the west bank of the Nile. Became a teaching unto itself. And what we now know is that it actually is a geometric template for an information system, a way of thinking about ourselves and our relationship to our bodies, one another, and in the world.
The structure of space itself.
Space is not empty.
Exactly.
And what is in space is not random.
And exactly, and it acts very much like a crystal, which has geometry. And
precisely.
This ancient geometry is a very direct mapping to advanced physics and the way we think of space-time.
Well, we had an awesome lunch at the Bent Street Cafe.
Exactly.
And we talked about all the things that we're about.
I think we had a few beers.
We may have.
Yeah, it was a warm day.
It was a very warm day, summer.
It was wonderful. I was so excited to meet you because I kind of left Canada on a limb, because I was at the time a pro skier. And I was at the end of my career. I was going to retire. I had been a skier for almost 25 years. I was at the top ranking, coaches and instructor in Canada. And but I had done, physics on the side all this time. And I was so excited about some of the discoveries I was making about space-time. And then I saw some of your work that you had just published. And I think you were working on a book. The book was eventually became known as the Divine Matrix, about the field that underlies all existence. Right. And so I decided to sell my ski equipment and move into a van.
I didn't know that part.
Right. This was a decisive moment for me. I had been in the ski career for a long time, and I had multiple accidents at the end, and I felt like those were signs. It was time for me to actually commit to physics fully. And so I got in the van and I drove to you. And wow. I called you on the way.
Well, I'm hearing things now that I'm hearing for the first time in 30 years. Yeah. I want to thank you for following that intuition, for following your trust.
I was so grateful that you would so graciously agree to meet me, and it was a very significant meeting for me.
Well, what you don't know is that it was a significant point in my life as well. I think many of you know I'm a scientist. I'm a degreed earth scientist, geophysics and geology with a background in life sciences, computer science, math, and physics, and archaeology and astronomy. And I say that because that multidisciplinary background has given me the ability to stay current with new discoveries. Some of them are made public, and many of them are never shared in the public. And we're going to be talking about a lot of those discoveries.
And I'm an autodidact.
Yeah.
I'm an autodidact, so I have learned on my own. So I was able to study many, many different fields that I wanted to study without any constraint. So as well, that's why when I looked at your background and I was in Canada, I'm like, okay, I got to talk to this guy, right?
Well, this is what brought us together, because we both had the sense, we in our society, we're conditioned to think about ourselves, our relationship to the world, and it's taught in our educational system in little boxes that we give names to, like geology and chemistry and biology and physics, to help people feel comfortable with those topics. But the truth is that there are no boundaries between chemistry and geology and biology and physics. Nature doesn't know about these boundaries. And if we're going to bring meaningful solutions to our lives, our relationships, our bodies, and our world today, we've got to cross those traditional boundaries. And Nassim was so willing to do that. And because you did not follow the formal path, it freed you, in my estimation. It's what freed you and gave you the opportunity to look beyond those traditional boundaries.
Same for you.
In a brilliant way. So I had just...
you did the traditional path, but eventually you had the courage to go and do the exploration.
Well, thank you. Well, this is what I was going to say. When you met me, I had just left the corporations. I had been working as a problem solver, first in the energy crisis of the 70s, and then in the Cold War crisis of the 80s, which is a very frightening time in the history of our world between the superpowers. And then the information sharing crisis in the 90s. I was the first tech ops manager at Cisco Systems when at that time computers were only learning to communicate with one another. And I left all that thinking that I would never travel again. So I found the most isolated, remote, beautiful, pristine, magnificent, beautiful place in the high desert of northern New Mexico, and said I could live the rest of my life here and contribute to the world. And you called me during the time. That's where I was in my life. We both felt, and I think it's fair to say this, we both felt that there is a way of knowing, Nassim, that if we embraced it in our lives, it was beyond just a philosophical concept, that it could truly bring peace to the world. For me, that was important, having come from the Cold War era and the very frightening nuclear era. Cooperation, end so much of the suffering that we see across the world today.
And for the ecology of the world.
Absolutely. Our relationship to nature and to Earth and to the cosmos that we're going to talk about in this course.
Right.
So I think it is our love for this world.
Our love for the truth.
Our love for the truth, to honor that truth. Right. Our love for the people of this world that 30 years ago brought us together. And we've certainly been in touch, and we've worked together off and on in various ways over those 30 years. But it's culminating in what we're about to bring to you.
And science is really about the pursuit of the truth. And it should not be impeded by, bias or, pre-assumptions about what you're going to find. You're supposed to do research and go where it leads. And, that's what we were willing to do.
There is a tremendous difference between what you and I are doing now, what we've been taught to do, me formally through academics. What I was taught is that there are accepted theories, such as the Standard Model in physics, or evolutionary theory and Darwin's idea of biology. And the new discoveries, scientists, typically corporate scientists, academic scientists, traditional thinking will take the new discoveries and try to force them into the pre-existing theories. It's kind of like a square peg in a round hole. If you pound hard enough, the square peg will go in the round hole, but it's never a good fit.
Right.
There's a huge difference between doing that and exploring the new discoveries.
Like a jump in paradigm.
Well, and following those discoveries to the story that they tell.
Right. And that's what I was so surprised when I met you, because I thought we were going to have a physics discussion or like scientific, not that what you showed me was not science. It's just like I was expecting something much more formal.
We had a burrito and informal.
And a few beers. And you started to tell me about ancient symbols, because you just came back from Egypt, and symbols that were found in England in crops and stuff. And I hadn't I didn't know about the crops symbols. I knew about some of the symbols of the ancient because I had done already some research there. But I was really surprised that you pulled that off because I had actually mapped the structure of space to already that symbolic structures you were showing me, right?
Right.
And it was, I was like, oh, I was unaware that there was already like, crop circles that were being made with this structure and so on. And so it was really kind of like transformative for me because it was like it opened a whole door.
Wow.
About like a field of knowledge that I hadn't studied. And so I started to study crop circles and what they were and how did they get there and all this stuff.
So you had the courage to step through that door.
Because it's the pursuit of the truth. And if it comes across and you don't know, is it a hoax? It's not a hoax, whatever. Well, you look at the data and the data will tell you, can you account for everything with two guys drinking, moonshine and stepping in the field at night? Or or there's something else, that's going on that you don't know about. Might be still natural, might be some kind of vorticular dynamics that's happening in the fields or whatever,
Wow.
or it might be some field interaction in the ionosphere or, like resonance field, for instance, somatic, like all kinds of resonance field can produce generate geometry.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected,
so,
for sure.
And then you look at the evidence and then eventually it's either something or it's something else. Whatever it's something, right? But the evidence tells you. And that's what science is about.
Ideally.
Yes.
Today, what we all know, and I know you all know this, that science has been hijacked by corporations, by politics, in some cases by religion. Data is being cherry-picked to coerce us into believing certain things about ourselves and our relationship to the world, that we are separate from one another, that we are essentially powerless in our own bodies, that we are vulnerable. Some people believe that carbon-based life is flawed. We're taught that we're the result of lucky physics and random processes that led to lucky biology and random mutations. And all of that leads to a way of thinking. Every day in our lives, we will heal our bodies, choose our relationships, solve the problems in our lives and between nations based upon those ideas. And one of the most fundamental that was, oh man, it was just so drilled into me when I was young, is that we live in a world where the fundamental rule of nature is competition. And it's a dog-eat-dog world, and that we have to struggle, that life is all about the struggle. And in a young, impressionable mind, that creates a mindset for the way that I was taught to think. Now, fortunately for me and for you, I think it's fair to say we both have what I would call a strong soul compass, because we are not so easily influenced by peer pressure. We know that things are happening and people think differently, but we are not persuaded from our pursuit of truth. And I think it's fair to say love. It is our love for this world and for the people of this world to know who we are. So this is where it gets so interesting. There is something called a pyramid of knowledge. It's an inverted pyramid with the point at the bottom. And each layer of that pyramid is one of the scientific pursuits. So the mathematics is the very bottom. It's the apex at the bottom. And then the next level is physics based upon those mathematics. The next level is chemistry based upon those physics. The next level is the earth sciences, including geology, based upon the chemistry. And then we go to the life sciences and then the psychological sciences. And there are all kinds of subdivisions that can be made. But here's the point. If you think about this, when new discoveries change the way we think about any one of those layers, everything that layer is the foundation for, everything that rests upon that layer must change to reflect those understandings. That's why we're putting this course together for you, because new discoveries have overturned conventional thinking when it comes to physics. Physics is one of the most fundamental ways of thinking, but those discoveries are not being reflected necessarily in the rest of the sciences. In biology and evolution, new discoveries are being made. So we've got these amazing discoveries at these low levels, but the higher levels are now using literally false assumptions based upon obsolete science to solve the problems of the
Well,
world
it's
today.
changing slowly, and it's exciting to see it change. But as well, to your pyramid, I'd like to add one thing.
Sure.
You had math at the apex. I would say it's geometry and math.
Absolutely.
Because math is an expression, it's a language that defines relationship.
Absolutely.
And that's something that is kind of lost in the shuffle in advanced physics in many cases. And this is something that Einstein was very insistent on. And that's why he was able to geometrize space-time and, produce general relativity. And so what we are getting to, and in these series, we're discussing it both in our different ways, is that we're showing that there's a fundamental geometry to space, right? And that this geometry of space, or this energy in space, is the source of all these other levels of the pyramid, right? Like the material world, right? The physics, the physicality that includes the forces, the scales, the relationship between all scales. All relationships, all ratios.
Absolutely.
And because the universe doesn't do, algebra, the universe does relationship ratios. And when we understand these ratios, then they repeat, right, across the scales. And as they do, they produce the different scales that we have in different fields of expertise that we've put in boxes.
Into the boxes. That's the boxes.
With not knowing the relationship between them. And what we've done now is that we've shown the relationship and the mathematical formalism, in my case, to show the relationship between these scales and the forces acting at different scales, the relationship between these forces, and as well the fundamental constants that emerge from it. And that we have kind of like floating in the air in physics and even in chemistry and biology. And now they start to relate to each other because you have the scaling factor, right?
Well, sure. It begins to make sense. And this is what we were saying. Nature doesn't know about those boxes. So what we've done in this course, if we want to honor you, and what we know is that everyone learns differently. Everyone learns differently. And some people need more details, some need less. You all have a left brain and you all have a right brain. I remember my science friends all used to say, it's all about the brain, forget about the heart. And my artist musician friends would always say, it's all about the heart, forget about the brain. The truth is they work together. They cooperate to help us be the best versions of ourselves. So what we've done is we want to honor your left brain as well as your right brain. We're going to give you the building blocks of the new discoveries, the fundamental understandings of biology, of the evolutionary discoveries, the DNA that's telling you that you are not the product of a random process from the primitive forms of life that you and I have been led to believe in the physics. So we're honoring both. And when we get to some of the math, and this is, I think, more for Nassim, because he really wants to share the new discoveries, he wants you to understand, and I do as well, not just to hear the words, but he's going to say, look at what I found. I want you to understand how this works. For some of you, if it's too technical, hang in there. It's all going to be worth it. It's all going to come together in the end.
Yes.
I have some more experiential pieces based on intuition and the new neurons in the heart and how we apply those to self-regulate.
Whatever you do, do not panic.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Or if you do, follow these techniques because they will help you with the panic.
It will, yes,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, so I think we just wanted to say this to you as we launch into this course to give you a sense of who we are, why we've come together, why we think this is important. I've never seen a course like this, Nassim, and I'm so honored. Nassim is in the process of writing a pivotal, seminal paper summarizing his discoveries. By the time this is released, I think that paper may be available. And I feel very blessed that you've taken the time away from that to be with our global family here.
I'm so glad to be sitting here with you doing this 30 years later.
30 years.
That was the bubble I thought we both put in the future, that like we were going to collaborate at one point and do things together and do science together. And here we are. 30 years later, we are doing it. So
Absolutely.
it's, I think it's an attribute of our, capacity to, grind every day and get it out there. And I think we have done an amazing first step, in you look at other things that are being done by other researchers in the field, people that we collaborate with, Bruce Lipton, other, Joe, and all these other amazing people. And the difference as well is that, and I think this is occurring as well more and more in the mainstream as well, is that it's becoming easier and easier to collaborate because you're not fighting ego, right? Because everybody's there for the the right reasons.
I think so.
People are there, like you and I, to find the truth, whatever that is, and and are willing to like go along with if it makes sense, if the formalism is good, if it just even philosophical sense, then it has value, because all of science, is thought of prior to being an equation on a piece of paper.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the ego that has limited us in the past, it will collapse under its own weight. The ego cannot sustain the long-term kinds of trials and tribulations that we've all been through. That's a whole course unto itself.
Right.
So when somebody asked me why I felt like this was important, and I'm going to make a statement, and I am not exaggerating. I believe that the understandings that you are about to embark upon this journey to embrace into your life, these are the fundamental understandings that hold the potential to forever free humankind, free our brothers and sisters from the shackles and the bonds of fear and suffering in our world. Because when we understand the deep truth of who we are, our relationship to our own bodies, our relationship to one another, to the earth, to the cosmos, to the future, to the past, to time and space itself. When we begin to understand those things, we begin to look at the world very differently. We are changed in the presence. I'm going to make this personal. You are changed in the presence of this knowledge. So people have asked, is this a deeply experiential course? I am offering in my first modules more of the kinds of experiences that you would expect, self-regulating your biology. But what I want to say is that the very act of embracing a new way of thinking about yourself is deeply experiential. And from that perspective, this whole course is an experiential course.
Yeah.
So
it's transforming me every day.
Well, me as well.
Yeah.
I couldn't be here if it had not.
Right. And we're all growing at the same time. And that's the amazing thing about being able to communicate this information as well, is that we all embark on this incredible journey of discovery, because there's plenty more to discover. And but certainly it has the potential to really change the way you think about yourself and the way you think about the universe around you, and how technology can transform the world around you and your relationship to it in such a way that is transcendent, meaning that technology is really an amazing tool if it's applied by an advanced, awareness of unification. Then it not only becomes benign, but it becomes sustainable and regenerative, and you get to thrive,
Sure.
And then the sky is no longer the limit.
Well, that's it. The technology is technology. How it's applied is the measure of a civilization. And when we learn to honor and respect who we are in our relationship to the world, then we can apply that technology in healthy ways in our lives that honor the principles of cooperation, of the unity that really brings us together. So I don't know about you, I'm excited for this course. I hope you're excited for this course. You have a little bit better understanding of what it is that you're stepping into. And my sense is the better we know ourselves, the better equipped we are to embrace whatever life brings to our doorstep. And I think you will agree with me. My world is changing. Your world is changing.
And the other day somebody was telling me about self-love. Yeah. And I was thinking, well, why is it so difficult, right? Because it seems, anyway, for me and for others that I've talked to that it's a challenging thing.
Yeah.
And I realized that that it may be the case because we don't know what we are. So if we don't know how, you have to know what you are if you're going to love you.
Absolutely.
Right?
And
so it's an important part of the equation.
that comes down to our story. I don't know about you. I'm ready to launch into this course. You ready
All
to do
right,
a course, Nassim?
let's go, man.
All right, brother, let's do a course together. I'm going to invite you to my first module of the course. Your story is your life. I'm going to share with you the new discoveries about how the way that you think of yourself actually impacts every nanosecond of your life. Change your story. You're going to change your life. But change our story. Guess what? We change the world. That's where we're going. Thank you for joining us for this first module. I look forward to you in my next module.